Alrighty, so I'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well and you guys are excited for the kickoff today. So in this presentation, we'll be discussing the experience that our team had as a rookie team. And basically, we're just going to be detailing the mistakes that we made and the lessons we learned. And honestly, the stuff in this presentation is stuff we wish we knew when we were a rookie team, and some stuff that can be really helpful to know as a rookie team or even a veteran team. So my name is Aditya Chitari. I'm the team captain for First Tech Challenge Team 14 through 20, The Antidote. And just a little bit about our team. Please click. Why aren't you clicking? Oh no. Perfect. All right, there we go. So The Antidote is a third-year First Tech Challenge team that participated in the state championships and won the third place Inspire Award, which qualified us for the World Championships in Detroit, where we were one of 5 Motivate Award finalists there in our rookie year and the Rover Ruckus season. For our second season, we won the Inspire Award at the Dayton qualifier, which again qualified us for the state championship, which was unfortunately canceled due to the coronavirus. And we'll see what will happen for Ultimate Goal. And we hope the season will be as exciting as we hope it will be. So I'm just going to jump straight into things. The first thing that most people will take a look into when they're building or starting to build their robot are like, what do I build my robot out of? And so what vendors have done, like companies have done, they've created competition kits, which are really easy ways to get started into building an initial drivetrain or an initial framework for your robot. And so there are really 3 big names out there that produce a competition kit. And as a rookie team, FTC team, you may be really enticed into buying
If you are an experienced vendor,
you
awesome.
might be really
If you're
enticed
not, there
into
are a
buying
lot.
a competition kit. And actually, we've used all 3 of these competition kits, as you can see in the bottom pictures below. And so we know the pros and cons and what works and what doesn't. So I'm going to start off with the first starter kit, which is the Rev Robotics building system. Now, Rev Robotics is an extrusion-based building system. And what that means is that there are no mounting holes on the extrusions. And so you can see that it's going to be really easy to adjust your mechanism's placement across the extrusion, which means you kind of have infinite positioning. So an example of a great use for extrusion is if you have some kind of mechanism that has a loose chain or a loose belt, and you need to retension it, it's really easy to just slide that mechanism down on the extrusion and retension it. So it's really easy in order to accomplish some of those type of mechanisms. That being said, Rev is slightly harder to work with. Usually the Rev extrusions come in odd sizes, and most of the time you will have to cut them down with a saw to get them into size. And that can be a bit of a messy job, sometimes depending on what tools you have. So we do recommend using something like a saw to make sure it's precise. The plastic parts that are included in the kit do wear down over time. We've noticed that with the constant loosening and tightening that comes with rapid building and prototyping a robot, these parts do wear down over time. And although there is an aluminum version available that you can buy on their website, we did feel that sometimes it's possible to damage the actual extrusions by over tightening and loosening several times. Combine that with the fact that it's really hard to actually make sure your mechanisms are square, and the fact that you have to use many extrusions in order to get a rigid frame. We eventually moved on to the second building system that we used for the Skystone season, which was Biotics. Now, it's a bit fundamentally different from what Rev Robotics is. It's a fixed pitch channel-based system. I've got a picture of it in the bottom right. And if you don't know what fixed pitch means, it basically means that the hole pattern on the channel repeats every certain distance. And it probably hits you right off the bat. They've got numerous mounting holes. It probably looks like Swiss cheese to you. So there are a lot of holes. And what that means is that it's really easy for teams to be really flexible with how they want to mount things. You've got a lot of freedom. You can mount it in a certain direction, certain angle. You've got a lot of freedom there. It's imperial based, which means the entire channel system is designed around inches. And what's really cool about Actobotics is that they feature solid aluminum tapped mounts and brackets. Now, these are really, really robust. because they're made out of solid aluminum. And we used it all the time in our drivetrain last year for mounts or brackets or connectory pieces. Also pretty amazing about Actibiotics is that they feature aluminum ball bearings for shafts. If you don't know, ball bearings are small little, like, they go around shafts and make sure that they rotate freely, basically. You use ball bearings in order to support a shaft across channel or a plate. And having the most efficiency you can in a rotary motion is really important. And it's way more efficient than Rev's plastic bushings, which are included in their starter kit. And these bushings do lose a bit of efficiency because of friction and heat that comes when it spins fast. They also have clamping hubs in order to secure onto shafts. A lot of other solutions to clamping down on a shaft is to use something called a set screw, which is where you have a really small screw and you basically over tighten it onto a shaft to hope that it stays on. Sometimes they just loosen up really easily and they actually kind of ruin the shaft. So a clamping hub is a really easy way in order to clamp onto that shaft. And also awesome about Actibiotics is that they actually offer a 25% discount for all First Tech Challenge teams. So it's relatively cheap compared to other building systems. We then actually moved on to, even though the Actibiotics seems like a great idea, we actually moved on to the third building system, which we are currently using for this ultimate goal season, which is GoBuilder. And again, like similar to Actibiotics, it's a fixed pitch channel-based system. And in fact, it shares a lot of the same benefits as Actibiotics. If you don't know, Actibiotics and GoBuilder are actually owned by the same company. So you'll see a lot of GoBuilder products offered in Actibiotics, and there's a lot of compatibility between the two. So GoBuilder is a metric-based system. It's created by the superior form of measurement, millimeters and centimeters, and they use sonic clamping hubs, which are amazing. We used them nearly every single place last year where we could because of how resilient they are and how powerful they are. GoBuilder honestly is very responsive to the needs of the FTC community. They try to release a new product almost every single week. And actually, yesterday, they released a brand new servo, which should help teams with deploying linkages or doing some things fast. And similar to Actibiotics, they've also got a 25% discount for all FTC teams. So then once you've figured out what your robot is made out of, you also need to think about how you're going to power it. So these are where motors comes in. And if you've read Game Manual 1, you should know that teams can only use up to 8 motors. And so there are various different types of speed and torque ratios that you can use for various applications on your robot. For example, you might want a faster gear ratio for your intake, but you might want a more powerful ratio for your drivetrain so that you can push other robots. And so there are two types of motors that you can buy on the market. The first is something called a spur gearbox motor. And like in the picture on the right, you can see that they've got numerous reductions. And so what that means is that each gear depends on each other in order to stay alive. And what we've noticed is that they're actually really easy to break. If one gear loses just one tooth, that entire gearbox is practically ruined. Fun fact that's probably not so fun for us, we actually lost an entire finals round at a competition because the spur gearbox motors on our drivetrain completely broke. And so we just weren't able to make the robot run on the field. And so we just really do not recommend these motors at all. Avoid them at all costs. That's where the second type of motor comes into play, and they're called planetary gear motors. If you're wondering why they're called planetary gear motors, well, it's because of the fact that they have a center, sun gear, that are surrounded by planet gears. So it's very similar to how a solar system is. Now, planetary gear motors are really reliable and efficient. They can handle radial and axial load really well compared to spur gearbox motors, and they're only a few dollars more. I've personally never seen a planetary gearbox break, so that shows how resilient that these motors are. And GoBuilder offers a wide variety of gear ratios you can use, from all the way from like 3.7 to 1 all the way to hundreds to 1. So summing it up, buy planetary gearbox motors only. Besides motors, teams can also use up to 12 servos. Now, if you don't know what servos are, they're basically small mini motors that are used only for precise and repeatable moves. One small difference between motors and servos, though, is that servos can typically only move between 180 to 270 degrees. So most teams will use servos in applications like a claw or a gripper, a gate, and I've got a quick video here, actually. Hope you guys can see it well. But it's just a pair of servos our team was using in order to grip onto the stone. And so you can see it's used for really precise and repeatable moves. And I just wanted to highlight a few servos that are out there on the market. The first one are the Rev Smart Robot servos, and these are included in their starter kit. They actually feature brass gears, which we found out to be kind of malleable and weak compared to the other servos available. It's actually possible to do something called a servo shock a servo. And what that means is that if you like ram into the wall or you stall for an exceedingly long period of time, it's actually possible to ruin the servo. And so we just don't recommend these servos at all. GoBuilder's dual mode servos feature steel gears, so these are robust. They won't break as often as the Rev servos. And what dual mode means is that it can actually also be used as a continuous rotation servo. And the third, but not really known servo is something called a coreless servo. You can actually just buy these generically from Amazon, but they're cheaper on longrobotics.com. And we found out that these are actually extremely versatile. We try to use them as at many places as possible on a robot because they're only a few dollars more, but they have the speed and power as numerous other servos that are way more expensive. Last thing to touch on is something called a servo block. You can see I've dropped a picture of it in the bottom middle-ish. You can think of a servo block kind of as like a backbone for the servo. If you have something that's really heavy and you need to alleviate the load on the servo, you basically attach the servo block onto the servo and kind of remove the radial load that's being exerted on the servo. So pro tip, try to use as many servo blocks as you can with servos. So now we're kind of getting into the custom parts area. These are some tools that we wish we had used when we were a rookie team because we kind of used only the stuff that were in the kit. And so a 3D printer is a great way for teams to develop custom parts. So it's really easy to just come up with a few prototypes, or if you need a new part, you wanted to see how it looks like before you buy it, you can just easily 3D print it. 3D printers are actually kind of cheap nowadays. You can buy a great one for under $250, and you can use them in a variety of applications. In the bottom right, I've got a picture of a phone mount that we printed for our for the Skystone season so that it can actually be angled in a certain orientation to see the Skystones and detect which one was the Skystone. Another great machine is a CNC. Now, these are another way to create custom parts, but usually teams will create parts out of aluminum or polycarbonate compared to the 3D printer's plastic. These machines do kind of run in the thousands of dollars, so it may not be in the viewpoint of every single FTC team, but if you can find a manufacturing company near you that can help you with this, it's a great opportunity to make strong, rigid parts. Also connected to making custom parts is CAD, or known as computer-aided design. And what our team loved doing is we designed parts or our full robot on CAD software before we built. And so if you're wondering what CAD helps you with, CAD really prevents the common issues that comes with building your robot, like spacing between certain mechanisms or compatibility between two building systems. And it's just a really easy way for teams to create custom parts. Like if you need a certain angle for your mount or you need a motor mount. And so there are numerous CAD software options available for teams, and most of them offer free licenses. I'm just going to touch on two. The first one is SolidWorks, which is known in the industry as the industry standard. I'm pretty sure almost every single engineer will have used and does know SolidWorks to some extent. And that being said, it does require quite a beefy laptop to keep up with the computational needs. So the second option is great for teams that don't have those computers. Like if you have a Chromebook, you can use a software called Onshape. Now, this is a fully fledged out CAD software, but it actually runs on the cloud. So you can just go to onshape.com, sign up as a first team, and use it completely for free. And what we really love about Onshape is that it's fully collaborative. That means that you can, especially in the virtual sense that we're in this year, it's a great way for designers in different places to work together on the same document in real time. So now that you've got your robot, you've built your robot, you know how it works, and you put it on the field, now it's just sitting there. We actually need to get it to run. And so that's where programming comes into play. And so teams can choose to program their robot with blocks or Java. Blocks basically are very similar to Scratch, and it's quite easy to understand. If you're coming from FLL, this might seem familiar where you just do block by block programming. But honestly, you do not recommend you use blocks because of the second option, which is Java. Now, Java is a real life programming language. And what that means is that you're going to have way more control over how your robot runs on the field and exactly your mechanisms, like how powerful you want to control it and how fast you want to do it. It's also really easy for installing libraries and plugins. Also wanted to feature GitHub. Honestly, use it all you can. It's a great way for teams to collaborate on backup and manage code. A lot of people like to think GitHub is like the Google Docs of code. It's very, especially in the virtual sense that we're in, it's really easy for programmers in the different places to work together to create code for the robot. And then a person in another house can test it easily, and that process can keep on going. I also have a small video clip of a robot that uses a plugin called Roadrunner. And you can see it's the robot that's pure black, that the robot has like pure curvy, flowy paths. And it's actually really easy for teams to create these type of paths with just your regular FTC motors. So if you have a question about this, go ahead and ask us at the end of the presentation. So now that your robot can run on the field, the next crucial step is drive practice. Now, driving your robot before the competition and not 15 minutes before your actual first match is super critical. So teams should know how your robot runs on the field, because most of the time you'll be practicing with just your robot, but you won't exactly know how your robot will work with 3 other robots on the field. And so if your robot rams into the wall or something and breaks your intake, for example, you've got to have that type of adaptability to resolve any issues that you have on the field. And honestly, I can't stress this enough. Practice as if it was a real match. I love, like, sometimes I feel like I just want to test auto, or we just want to just test teleop. But it's really imperative that you test it as if it was a real match. The real matches will never be just auto or never be just teleop. So you want to practice that 30-second auto, that 8-second transition, and that 2-minute teleop. It gets you into the game and kind of like makes the nervousness go away when it comes to actually driving the robot. So just practice a lot. I'm pretty sure Ohio FTC is figuring out something with scrimmages. I think we'll be seeing a virtual option of that soon. So I really encourage teams to go out and try to work into those virtual scrimmages and really practice driving your robot. A bit apart from the robot side, kind of end with the robot side, but just want to talk about the budgeting and fundraising. If you're coming from FLL, the average budget for a rookie team, which is about $4,000 to $5,000, can seem like a substantial jump. And so, especially since you're buying things like your team registration, your game field, robot parts, t-shirts, and more, the prices just keep on stacking and stacking up. And so we really recommend creating a budgeting spreadsheet that allows you to track your income and expenses. And it's a great way to subsidize those costs is by reaching out to local companies and filling out as many grants as you can. It's practically free money at that point, grants are. And it's a really easy way for you to make things cheaper and purchase more and more efficient parts for your robot, etc. Something that's kind of crucial for this is something called a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And basically, it's the only way that businesses will donate to you because donations will be tax deductible on their end. And so it's a win-win for both parties. And so contact us if you want any more information about a 501c3. But that about wraps up my presentation for today. If you have a question, you can go ahead and ask it now, or you can shoot us an email at theantidoteftc@gmail.com. I also want to take a quick second to advertise the FTC Discord. It's a great place for coaches, mentors, and students alike to collaborate with various other teams from across the country and also across the world. And we've got a lot of people who are, awake at ungodly hours like 5 a.m. to help anybody right before competition. It's a really fun and collaborative area. So I do recommend joining that. And you can also personally DM me there. Alrighty. I'd love to be able to answer any of the questions that you guys might have.
All right, thank you so much for your presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Before I get to that, I wanted to make sure that we got the code word out for our session before we wrapped it up. And our code word for this section, since it's so early, is donut. So, so if you're keeping track of code words today for those prizes, the code word for this session is donut. So does anybody have any questions?
I'll give you one.
All right.
So what do you all use to cut your framing material?
Great question. So when we used Rev Robotics, we were using a blade runner. It's kind of like a table saw that just moves up and down really fast. And we kind of just slid the extrusion as we cut it. And that's kind of where we lost that precision. If we wanted two pieces that were exactly like 400 millimeters, sometimes when you measured them after the cut, it would be like 403 millimeters on the one and 397 on the other. You can kind of blame it on us because we're pretty bad at cutting it nicely, and slightly nicer tools might help with that, but also it just proves that you have to cut it down and it's kind of hardish to work with. That's where like channel-based systems like GoBuilder or Biotics, they feature kind of set distances. So they offer like a new channel for every single hole that they have. They'll have a product to sell, and it's also really easy to cut those down. Also like on a bandsaw or something like that. Come on, guys, ask me some random questions.
We get all the tough ones out there. And so anybody have anything? I know running a rookie team is not easy, and getting off to the beginning is not a fun thing to do. And it sounds like you guys have a good foundation going forward.
Maddie from the chat asks, what was your biggest challenge as a rookie team? That's a great question. I think the biggest challenge for us was probably figuring out how to build efficiently, especially since we didn't really we came from FLL, so we kind of had a bit of knowledge coming into FTC, but it was really hard for us to understand that, what makes a good robot. And so we just kind of slapped parts together to what we thought looked good, and we just kind of went with it. And then when we went to actual competition, we saw other robots, and we realized that there's a lot different. There's a lot of different ways to do the same things. And that's where you learn about this more efficient and more reliable ways. For example, we put on that spur gearbox because we didn't know any better. And then when we went to competition, we got basically slapped in the face because of the fact that they're really easy to break. And that's where those planetary gearbox motors come into play. So a tip for that would be to do a lot of research, kind of watch the game reveal videos from last year. A lot of teams love sharing their ideas regarding their robot and stuff like that. So try to see how world champions have done their robot, and they have a lot in similar with other teams. And just try to take inspiration from as many teams as possible and kind of just make it your own on your own robot. Also, kind of money was a bad way not best for us. We kind of struggled with getting money. So filling out those grant applications and reaching out to as many companies as possible was really important, because we really struggled as a rookie team, but we were able to kind of enhance our relationships with companies are probably the best way in getting more sponsors and then getting more money from your sponsors. So just sending them like an update email every month or something like that is a great way for them to stay connected with your team, and they'll see the progress that you've made, and they'll be willing to give you guys more money. Another question in the chat was, what is the best way to get in contact with local companies? Great question. What we did actually for Worlds, when we had that $2,000 world registration fee in our rookie year, what we ended up just doing was just mass send out emails to as many local companies as possible. What we've noticed is that if you reach out to a bigger company, so like Facebook or like Microsoft or something like that, it's kind of really hard to get a hold of them. And if you do, you end up getting not a lot of money, maybe in the hundreds of dollars. But if you reach out to a more local company that's not that big, they'll kind of feel connected to you as you're coming from their hometown or something like that. So we've noticed that local companies tend to give a lot more money, especially even in the thousands of dollars. So try to reach out to as many local companies as possible. Just you can send them an email or you can go cold call them. We made a sponsorship packet, which we delivered when we went to sponsors, like potential sponsors, to try to tell them, oh, we do robotics, this is what we do, etc. like that. Your question. Anybody else with any other questions? You can ask anything, don't hesitate.
All right. So I think we'll call that a wrap for this session. I said our next session starts at 9:45. So we'll be all set to go then with, looks like scouting with 6133 the nuts. So that'll be awesome. Thank you so much for giving us a presentation on your rookie year. Thank you so much.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you
great
so
job.
much, guys.
Thank you.
A lot of stuff I wish I would have known way back when I started.
Yep. All right.